Hi, everybody. It's John Galante, president of AE Ventures, here with another in our Builder Innovator series of webcasts. Today, I'm very excited to be introducing a new series of episodes that we are partnering with the Consumer Technology Association on, that's called the Future of Home Technology. When the trade association was formed back in the 20s. CTA is probably best known for the Consumer Electronics Show, which it produces in January annually and is the world's largest technology show of any sort. But along with that trade show, CTA has enormous resources in the realm of information, in the realm of expertise, both on its staff and in its membership. And we really want to try to tap those bodies of information and expertise to provide some insights to builders on what's around the corner in terms of home technology. And that's so you can make the right plays on technology to be in tune with the trends. So a little more granularly on CTA, the organization is doing consumer and trade and channel research, and even upstream with the manufacturers and technology developers, dozens of reports, empirical reports annually. We want to be able to tap some of that information, especially the research studies that are driven by the Consumer Technology Association's Smart Home Division. And then that's the place where we're going to be looking for strong member and staff inputs, as well as particularly the Smart Home Division of CTA. That's a little bit on the goals of this series. The episode that is before us is something I'm calling network robustness, kind of a faux Latin term that I put together to talk about really what's become one of the utilities within a home in terms of the network infrastructure and the connectivity services that are going into a home. And joining me, they are Eric Bodley, who is the CEO of Future Ready Solutions. He's also the chairman of CTA's Smart Home Division, and I want to hear from him a little bit more about the association and that membership division in just a little bit. He's has a world of knowledge and experience to share, and he also tells a good joke. He also tells some bad jokes. Gino Hefner is the co-owner of Bethesda Systems, and Bethesda Systems is in Bethesda, Maryland, which is Greater Washington, D.C. I haven't known Gino that long, but I've known his company and his partners for a good long while. And not only are they really successful on high-end home technology systems installation, but they've had some great partnerships over the years with higher volume national and regional builders. Amy Westwood is our third panelist. She'll talk a little bit more about her background, but like one of the signature tech-forward communities in the history of this smart home or home technology industry has been Celebration, a Disney real estate development in the Orlando area, where Amy was involved in really setting those technology standards a good long while ago, and has brought that expertise forward with lots of other clients in a consulting capacity. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit more about CTA and the Smart Home Division. Eric's going to take care of that. I'm going to provide a little brief history on network infrastructure in new homes. Amy is going to take the ball and really talk about the network services and the community-wide network infrastructure. And then Eric's kind of in between, right? He's got this taking fiber not just to the pedestal or the demarcation point, but how do we get it distributed throughout the house. And then Gino, like I said, is going to take us through some of the network infrastructure requirements and traditional Performance Plus upgrades. And with that, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you for some some commentary or information on CTA and the smart home division.
So the Consumer Technology Association isn't a special interest group. It's the entire group. It's everything that involves technology to the consumer, ranging from do-it-yourself all the way to professionally installed systems. The Smart Home Division is one of about a dozen divisions or councils within CTA that focuses on special applications. We have a health and wellness division, we have a video division, audio, mobile audio, electric cars. The Smart Home Division has evolved from what we used to call the Tech Home Board to the Smart Home Division. And it initially started with companies like Bethesda, who does professionally installed systems, but that scope has widened significantly. The do-it-yourself market, aging in place, health and wellness, this is all part of the smart home. And it's not just having an Alexa in your house. It's integrating everything from who's at the front door to how, an elderly parent needing, monitoring and things of that nature. So we meet nearly every month. We do a lot of research. We've just completed an update of the home builders research study that we've done. We did rather about 5 years ago. And so we updated that with new information. And if you're in the business of selling or providing as a vendor or as a reseller, an integrator, CTA is a great place to park your shingle and to network and be involved in people in the industry.
Well, tell me about CTA and the division's interest in home builders and maybe even multifamily property developers and operators.
Well, CTA works pretty closely with other associations, the Kitchen and Bath Association, the National Association of Home Builders, as a resource. Builder could join as an associate member. MDU work would come through a lot of the vendor partners. Some of the more active ones are companies like Comcast, which is the Xfinity platform, or Dish Network. They're all members of CTA and contribute on that level. It's a matter of the CES, which is the annual largest technology show in the world in Vegas, basically take over just about every square foot of convention space in the city with about 150,000 attendees. And it's where new technologies are introduced through what we call Eureka Park, which is at the Sands Convention Center, or now called, I think, the Venetian Convention Center, to the main floor, which has what I call the land of giants, all that, Sony, Samsung, LG, you name it, in extremely detailed large format booths. So to the home builder or someone developing a multi-dwelling unit or upgrading technology, it's a great place to attend because it gives you a front row view of where technology is heading. And the smart home now encompasses charging stations for electric vehicles. It's very rare you could see this wide of a scope of technology in one place.
I'm going to go back and talk about what was really the first hit product, the good old structured wiring enclosure. Back in the mid 90s, as the internet service was arriving at the residence and the video signals were getting a little higher bandwidth, we needed a different type of infrastructure in that home than what was put in place by the service providers. So we had a lot of homes built in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, which was the go-go years for home building, right? And we had a lot of homes built with structured wiring enclosures, right? We had a lot of home run Cat5 wire and RG6. Some would say it might have been a little bit overbuilt because wireless arrived not too long afterwards, and a lot of these runs became superfluous. The hardwired runs became superfluous. So I think we're at a moment now where with video conferencing needs and other high bandwidth applications, that there's pretty broad recognition, at least in the technology community, that a hybrid hardwired and wireless approach within the premises is maybe the right kind of performance infrastructure. Part of my goal for this being the first episode is that we know this infrastructure is essential to a lot of other devices and applications happening in a quality way. And I'm hoping we can get to more of a little bit more of a rules-based order again, with some basic recognition of what minimum requirements look like, and an understanding of what, again, the performance plus options and upgrades would be, and less of a free for all or do nothing or do as little as possible.
Well, I know for once, I'm in a group with people that have been in this industry a long time. I know there's a lot of folks that are newer to the industry, but I feel like people used to say, you have forgotten what most people remember about this space when you start talking about inside wiring and structured wiring and things we learned at Celebration about what happens inside a home, which is more important than anything else once you bring these high bandwidth networks up to a house, and how that signal is distributed now among 10, 20, 30 or more devices. So as John mentioned, I started my telecom career at the Walt Disney Company. If you know anything about Disney, you know that Walt Disney created all of his own municipalities and governmental entities, so he wasn't beholden to some of the things that most cities and municipalities are, because Disney was the municipality. I started working at, first of all, I was a front desk hostess, but those were back in the days where you could rise to the ranks high up within the company by starting on the Jungle Cruise, or for me, it was checking in guests at the front desk. I ended up at the regulated phone company, which is Vista United, was it Vista United at the time, 51% owned by the Walt Disney Company and 49% owned by, at the time, United Telephone of Florida, which in about 15 iterations is now Lumen. So that's where I got my start on the non-regulated side. I was responsible for everything that happened on the Walt Disney World Resort property. Then I went to California and was responsible for everything from the Queen Mary, which Disney owned for a certain amount of time, the studios, Disneyland, and all of Disney's holdings out there. So I came back and fell in love with a little town planning called Celebration, which was really taking what Walt Disney had talked about with Epcot Center, a place where people could live, work, and play, a community of the future, and was tapped to lead the technology cornerstone for Celebration. And we answered the question, what happens when a developer takes on the technology planning role, as opposed to what was happening at the time, where you just wait for the incumbent to show up with some kind of cable and install it. They had a regulatory right and obligation to install it, which obviously has gone away with deregulation. So that's really where I started my love affair with community development and technology, and seeing how technology really could change the way people live and what they did with their time, what they did with their free time. So it was a little petri dish. It was actually a big sandbox. But the learnings that we got from integrating technology and Celebration really paved the way for what I have done over a 30-year career in integrating technology into new communities, whether they're master plan communities, mixed use, multifamily, resort. We just are huge cheerleaders for the importance of that. The way that we kind of approach technology today is really, again, based on the consumer's insatiable appetite for technology. And Eric went through, what some of those are, whether it's health and wellness and wearables, smart home technologies. We learned a lot during COVID, where folks had kind of retreated to their second, or in some cases third homes, only to find that they could not really do anything that they needed to do because of lack of bandwidth. And I think that really pushed the industry faster to come up with solutions that delivered bandwidth to the homes, because it was proof that the consumer absolutely demanded higher bandwidth services. So probably the other folks on this call remember when people said, nobody will ever use a gig. Nobody cares. There's no applications for it. So it was always, which comes first, the application or the network? And there are, years of discussion about, is anybody ever going to use a gig? Well, I know, look at it today, we're at 1, 2, 5, 10 gig networks, and people on, again, insatiable appetite for that bandwidth. So the way that we approach in working in our own communities, but also with developers, builders, homeowners association, when it's an overbuild situation, is we focus on several different components. One is fiber to the X, and I don't think anybody will argue that that is the best architecture. A lot of talk about wireless, as John was talking about, relative to inside wiring, but our default is fiber to the X, fiber to the cell tower, fiber to the home, fiber to the school, fiber to the office building. We don't ever come off of that, even though some developers and builders say, let's all go wireless anyway. Why can't I just do a web pass or some kind of wireless solution? And so, we have our work cut out for us when that's the case, but it's always fiber to the X, and it's got to be today either XGS-PON or its future replacement. The second part of that is wireless. So we know that even though fiber is the best solution, that everybody's untethered from their devices, whether they're in their home, whether they're outside in the community. So we also focus on the LTE, cellular part, Wi-Fi, CBRS, all of those technologies that ensure that a community member can leave their home and stay connected, whether they're in multifamily, single family, or resort environments. And then the third piece, which is the piece that I know my colleagues here are really going to dig into, is what happens when you get inside the X. And in this case, what happens when you reach the outside of the home and get into the home with this culvert of bandwidth that we're going to deliver through service provider relationships. You've got to have the right infrastructure inside in order to distribute that service. So we see tons of builders and even low voltage installers that haven't figured that out, even architects that we see that haven't realized that the integrity of what happens inside the home is key to the success of that bandwidth that's coming in from the service provider to deliver that. You have to have both. It is hand in glove, and you can't have one without the other. So when we talk about these networks, we go to kind of a smart city, which is going to narrow down to the smart home. This is kind of a busy slide, but we really focus on the infrastructure. What is underground? Who is providing it? What is the network technology that is going to reach every home, building, school, light pole, gunshot detectors, irrigation systems, lighting, bus stops? Now, that could be as small as in a community with an HOA where there's a community building and maybe a gate or some other things, all the way to, full-blown municipality or city. So we know that if we don't get that infrastructure piece right with a service provider, that I think you call it a WAN, John, if we don't get that right, it doesn't matter what happens inside the home, because there won't be enough bandwidth delivered to that home to support those applications and smart home technologies.
I think it's an important slide because it's kind of the inadvertent consequences of wireless, right? It's like, oh, we got all this wireless bandwidth, but then there are all these devices converging on that wireless bandwidth, right? And there's really no traffic cop on that stuff.
And even with wireless, you still have to have fiber to that cell tower, to that antenna. You still have to have a lot of fiber to deliver wireless services in a community. And I think that's where some folks, don't get that. It's not just coming, from Starlink, to your device. There's even more fiber we have found in a community that has a huge wireless overlay. There's more fiber than less in that outside plant network.
So you've been in touch with the service provider community for years, for decades now on this stuff. And it's just like, and I think part of the reason why I wanted to invite you in here, and I want builders to think of the service providers and the community-wide infrastructure as partners in this, delivery. But like, where have we come from a service provider perspective on quality, on robustness of infrastructure at the community-wide level?
The provider landscape has changed enormously, and I think there's a lot of builders that maybe don't understand how it has changed, because I think there are builders and developers and landowners and you name it. They have recollection of how it was years ago, where there was the incumbent phone company, the franchise cable company, and they would just show up with their stuff, whatever their stuff was, whether it was coax or fiber or HFC, whatever their network was, and they would just put it in without really anybody knowing what it was, what the service level terms were, what the services were that were going to be required. Then along came a little thing called deregulation, which opened up the service provider industry not only to the incumbent providers, but also private ISPs, CLECs, wireless companies. So if you look at this slide, these are companies that we work with today. There's some companies on here that a lot of people have never heard of, but they are coming into new communities and competing with the incumbents by promising a lot of things. One, which is the network. What do we always say? It's the network, stupid. These fiber high-speed networks, but they're also offering incentives to builders in the way of door fees for marketing rights, bulk arrangements. If a builder wants to take that internet service and pass it through the homeowner in a HOA line item. So it is very complex, and there are pros and cons to all of the kind of scenarios that providers deliver. But I think the point is there are a ton of new providers out there who are competing with the sometimes not favored incumbent phone companies and cable companies. And it's all about internet. So we rarely see, I know Comcast still does a great job with their linear cable TV, but it is all about the bandwidth pipe. Nobody cares about phone. Nobody cares really about linear cable TV because they're going to curate their own through their streaming service because now they have the bandwidth to support that HD, 4K, multiple, streaming video channels.
The home building it's such a local market, right? It's not the same everywhere. But is this bandwidth, this need for speed, is it everywhere in the country? It's not like some parts of the Southeast, people don't want high bandwidth internet. They want it everywhere, right?
Yes, they want ubiquitous, high-speed connectivity everywhere, all the time. So it's not just, in certain urban areas where they want 1 gig. Everybody wants it and everybody's using it. I mean, I think there was a time when 1 gig was just kind of coming out as a consumer service, where it was really a marketing piece. They just wanted to be able to say, we have 1 gig, we have 1 gig. Nobody knew what 1 gig was going to do. And now guess what? They figured it out. And now they want more than that. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these companies offering 2, 5, 8. These networks are equipped now for 10 gig, and people are gobbling it up, not because it's cool anymore, but because they're using the power of that network to live their lives.
So this is what you guys do, right?
This is what we do. So a typical scope of work for us is we have these kind of silos to ensure that there is the connectivity from the service provider and that the agreements that the service provider is going to put in front of the builder is in the best interest of the builder. So it is a competitive landscape. And we feel like when we're coming alongside our clients, we are selling first of all, the value of the service provider to bring in their best network. So if somebody comes in, well, we've got this great HFC network. Like, no, it's got to be XGS-PON with a roadmap to get to the next level. And builders that's not their area of expertise. So we do add value to builders and developers by coming alongside. What are your technology goals? Who is your consumer? Is it an aging community where health and wellness is even more important? Is it a community where there's people going to school? And put together a technology strategy that speaks to who their user is and who their consumer is.
Amy, this reminds me a lot of a situation we face at the premises level, which is I've been trying to encourage builders to know what they want to do up front, right? The merchandise assortments, and to do design and engineering work for their models, to know what they want to put in their house so that there's a scope of work that they can provide to the trade contractors to do the work. And you might not like this as much, Gino, but they're in control of that scope of work, and they're able to negotiate, a great value versus just throwing it over the silo to somebody else. But you're helping the developers really specify what they want, which really makes for better service provider relationships in the end. Is that right?
Right. And it even goes back another step. It even goes back further than that. The best day of my life is when a client calls and they have us connect with their land planner, their engineering firm, whether it's Kimley Horn, whoever. So we're at the table saying, okay, there's a trench. How much conduit are we going to need in that trench? How much conduit did the service providers need? Are they going to joint? Do you want them to joint trench with you? Do you want them to give you the material and you put it in? We just saved a client over $1 million off of their infrastructure budget for a single family home community in Tennessee. Over $1 million right out of their construction budget because of the relationships that we negotiated with two service providers, and what they're not only the network that they're committing to deliver, but also how it's going to be installed and by whom and who's going to bear the cost. This is a phased approach for our master plan community. I won't go into it, but we come alongside the builder, the developer, the engineering firm, and we evaluate and come alongside to develop a technology strategy, just like they have a landscape strategy. We're just the experts in that area that could become a part of the team. We really serve as the kind of that internal department for builders and developers that don't have it. And that's why they need to reach out to someone who they can trust and advise them on it. Right. So, they're all different. Some are conservation-based communities. Some are new build communities. Some are resorts. And so I think it's suffice to say that these technology plans and strategies are customized for each type of client and builder, but they are all critical and they all have to do with everything that I've stepped everybody through this afternoon, which is ensuring the best technology for today and in the future, not only for the builder, but also for the consumer for years to come.
Yeah, Amy, you couldn't have set it up better. So having been through this journey with John in past lives where we were wiring, making sure that you had good coax, not, low bandwidth coax. Believe it or not, there was low bandwidth coax. I started Future Ready. By the way, the term future proof, we've sort of become a little against, because if bulletproof means prevents bullets, does that mean future proof prevents the future? So we want to be future ready. And we started this company with the idea that hooking products from product A to product Z, we started looking forward, and we're a technology solutions provider to integrators like Gino's company. And we focus on a very narrow group of product categories, one of them being fiber optics. And we've been supplying that to integrators for next year will be 10 years. And we saw a big challenge as we saw deployment start happening. A lot of the service providers had wired a community with coax, and people are begging for more bandwidth. Or a new community of the products, it was sort of, what comes first, the fiber or the bandwidth. And you're right, Amy, wireless seemed to be the panacea to everyone. The service providers have been focusing primarily on what I call the last mile to the community. And what we focus on is the last meter. And what we find is our customers generally are installing systems in the upper 5% of America, $1, $2, $3 million and up homes. And when a service provider drives up to that home to install new service, they look at that home and go, no way am I drilling a hole through these walls, and they drive off. So we looked at how do we provide a way to get from the outside of the house, called the demarcation point or demarc point, to where Gino's company or any integrator is going to install the equipment. We launched in August a fiber rapid demarc kit. And what it is, we went to the ISE Expo in Dallas. We were the only company that sells to integrators there. This is all service providers. And we stopped all the engineering people and asked them, look, if we put this on the outside of the house and the integrator installs this to the equipment closet, will you connect to it? And what this is a outdoor enclosure that has 150 feet of single mode armored fiber that can be wheeled off to whatever length, and 150 feet is a long way from a demarc to an equipment location. So we think 98% of the jobs will be able to use this. And this is something, it uses the proper connectors. It's an SCAPC connector. It's pushable. It's no termination required. It's a self-terminating product. And this has been a big a problem solver, because it doesn't matter who shows up to do the final install. They can fuse on, plug in on the outside of the house, go to where you want the equipment to be, not in the laundry room or a master bedroom closet on a shelf, and they can hook up their product. We even supply the little jumper that goes from their product, from the indoor plate to their product, and then you can take it from there with networking. And generally, that's going to be copper category 6 or 6A to get these higher speed bandwidths. So, commonly installed cables, it's very easy to run fiber from a network closet to a home theater to a master bedroom system, and you can transmit between switches, if you will, at extremely high speed data rates. And this eliminates the unbalance that occurs. And even today, we now see wireless access points that are reaching 2.5 and 5 gig, and that fiber is the only way that that's going to be transmitted. So you've got a wireless access point, so we can all the things that don't need super high speed data, things like you mentioned, Amy, thermostats, a Ring camera. A lot of these things don't require super high speed capabilities. Well, that's what wireless is made for. But connecting two switches together, we can they become one switch. So watching and streaming a 4K movie or series through the house to the master bedroom or the family room, it all becomes seamless and extremely high speed.
And you're saying fiber to a WAP versus fiber to the specific node in a bedroom or a great room, right?
Well, it could be both. We're recommending now that you run 2 strands, a duplex fiber, which is, by the way, it's about the same cost as category cable. Run that and leave it dark, as we call it, but you're still going to run your category 6 because you're going to power the WAP using power over Ethernet or PoE. Well, Cisco, for instance, has wireless access points now that have both a fiber, what's called an SFP slot, so I can attach the fiber, but we're still going to use the copper to power it. We haven't found a way to send power over fiber yet, over light, although it's absolutely capable of it. It's just, it gets a little dangerous when you get to those levels.
So Eric, just curious, we're in the premises and Gino's here too, but this might sound exotic to the average national or regional builder that's doing a volume of homes. Hell, I couldn't rely on these low voltage integrators for the Cat 5, Cat 6E stuff. Who's going to know how to do fiber? I mean, is this a rarefied air in terms of the installers, the integrators who can work with this, or is it more of same bag of tricks?
It's an evolution of craftsmanship is really what it is. It is super simple. We sell a particular type of fiber that does not require fusion splicing and all the craziness that the service providers use, because we're in short runs and non-critical the lengths, if you will. What's really adding to all of this and what stimulated us to develop this kit is Congress passed last year an infrastructure bill that allocated $55 billion to bring internet to everywhere. And the service providers are now salivating. Someone who my community has copper coax that is so old that I have an actual amplifier in my home that they needed to use because the copper had degraded. Well, they didn't want to put the fiber in because that would come at their expense. Well, Congress has allocated these grants, and I think 40 some out of the 50 states have now approved and are involved in this funding. And now the service providers have a great incentive to install the latest technologies. So you're going to see, and this is supposed to grow to 91 billion with a B over the next couple of years. So there is going to be a massive revolution. Trust me, the service providers want the builders in the communities to now, hey, this is all good because the service providers are being subsidized, and everyone will win over the long haul.
And what do we got here? This is the all-in-one kit shown in full glory.
Yeah, this is what we launched. We have other evolutions of this that go because we use fiber out of the house to go to a front gate, to go to cameras around a property, to a dock. You can't really use copper because of the distance, and you've got issues with copper like, surges, voltage drops, there's all sorts of things. So this kit is an outdoor enclosure ready to go. If the builder if we've installed a flexible conduit between that point and the equipment room, you can just attach this. Service provider attaches, the integrator can feed it right to their equipment location, and we provide an indoor wall plate that has the proper connector, super low profile, just goes on the wall. Gino, we're seeing integrators across the country now making this a standard. And we've had a number of discussions with builders that it doesn't matter which integrator they choose. Hopefully they're choosing Bethesda systems in your market, but this is a standardized way to make sure every home is future ready.
Some of the gear?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about the service provider. There's other ways that we can use, and I've already mentioned it, that we can transmit fiber to other critical areas. Having one switch and then wiring everything with copper is a great step. But there's some areas, if someone has a master suite and has television and other things in that room, or a home office, very good example of running fiber between the main switch and not just running a whole bunch of runs of copper to that room. You can run one run of fiber, and they have short runs of copper plugged in right in the home office.
Gino, before you jump in on this, why don't you tell us a little bit about Bethesda Systems?
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate you having me here today. Bethesda Systems, we're a home automation company out of Bethesda area. I joined the company in the mid 2010s. We did mostly a lot of high-end residential homes. My business partners started the company in the early 2000s. I met up with them and started out as a tech, doing all the installations. I didn't know much about the industry when I joined, so I'm definitely the newbie of this group here for sure. So it's probably only fitting that I bring up the rear. But I loved it immediately. It was a passion of mine to learn anything and everything I could as soon as I started working, and was fortunate enough in this area to have that opportunity with the Bethesda team, and soaked up as much as I could doing installs and learning everything about products and networking and infrastructure. We're very lucky in this area where we kind of get a seat right at the forefront of all the change that seems to happen with technology. And, we try to embrace it. We try to stay ahead of it. We try to do everything we can to, as Eric said, kind of future ready homes as best we can, considering how fast the technology changes.
So your first slide here, thanks for that overview. Your first slide here is pretty much about the device demand of that network infrastructure, right?
Yeah. So like you said, about that mid 2010s time frame, when we were doing a lot of just high-end custom stuff, we started to see some trends changing. And it piqued our interest enough, to take a look back in that production market, which we, not necessarily avoided, but just didn't see that as an opportunity for our company at the time. Device costs were too expensive. Builders, and to this day, we still struggle with the builders, seeing the importance, I think, as both Amy and Eric have pointed out well, the importance of what networking is to the consumer, what that experience is shaping itself into. Right. So we started to see some of these trends here where, more and more people were expecting some sort of technology, not even, a high demand for, the types of stuff we were doing in custom homes, but just a very basic form of some type of technology. And I think, John, you mentioned it. I mean, it's embarrassing, some of the homes that we've gone into where there is no wiring whatsoever. And it's it's dumbfounding. I think some builders, still don't see the importance of what internet and this technology does for the home. And, I think they've been driven for years and years thinking they just need to provide security. And, they haven't gotten out of that rut of the security provider is the end all be all low voltage provider. And what we started to see was the demand.
I don't know. I think the builders have run out of room to escape from this. I mean, when I see Zillow new construction reports that 65% of new home buyers expect smart home features to be in there, 65, 2 out of 3, and what I like, my soapbox is, this is everywhere in people's lives, right? It's in your car, it's in your workplace, it's in the entertainment establishments you go to, all of this convenience, technology, high performance audio, video. And why would the laws of physics cease to exist inside of a new home? Nobody's been able to explain that one to me yet, but there's still people who believe that. So what about some of these big drivers? This is more recent, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think COVID was a catalyst for this change and really kind of pushed a lot of what we just saw in terms of what the consumers expect to the next level. We're seeing more and more remote work. Obviously, the streaming content, it's long beyond what we ever thought it would be, and it continues to grow, and everybody's moving in that direction with their apps and so forth. Video conferencing, you mentioned it, right? Just the demand for the bandwidth in the home is growing, and not just inside of the home, inside of the garage for smart chargers, outside of the home for the living areas and entertainment areas outside of the house, right? So it's above and beyond just making sure that we deliver what we need to inside, but it's the complete home. And so that's what we've really started focusing on. Again, taking what we've learned from the custom side of things and bring it to the production, is how to create a proper experience that a homeowner buying a brand new home is going to be able to get anything and everything they want out of their home based on putting together proper infrastructure where they'll be able to utilize, the devices and the entertainment that they want to use.
Yep. And then we're gonna dive in, and this is really from that national and regional builder, the higher volume builder perspective. It tends to be about standards plus options on home technology, and the network infrastructure is the same. So I asked you to outline what a good standard would look like, something that you would work with Brookfield or another builder on, and this is what you outlined for us.
Yeah, I heard Amy say something, and it was a great point where, there's builders that see this as a cost to them, like they're spending money on things. But what we're trying to let builders know is that this is an opportunity for them to actually make money. The standards and the packages that we put together and that we suggest, obviously for the builders that we work with, but even the ones we consult with, this is a money-making opportunity, right? This is a far cry from what Eric was talking about in the house, but this is just a bare minimum, which is, sad that there's builders today that aren't even meeting these basic standards. So, right, that plastic enclosure where we have all the structured wire coming into the home. For us, plastic is important. I know there's issues where you can't, but, the plastic enclosure, if you got a house devices, you don't want to have any type of metals or things of that nature that might disrupt the signaling. And then at a bare minimum for inside the home, wired for wireless, right? That's what we call it. So basically getting hardwired connections, and Eric pointed this out too, but hardwired connections to your access points. The house is wide open. There's no reason why we can't get the wiring we need to at least provide a minimum solid wireless network throughout the entire home. We all know the devices out there that can do mesh networking, and that's a great solution for when you run into issues where you can't get wiring. But the degradation that you get from the hops in a mesh network, is really going to cut into your bandwidth, right? So while you have the opportunity, let's get everything hardwired that's going to support your wireless network. So here's just some pictures. You got your plastic enclosure with all your home runs going throughout the house. And in this particular instance, it's in an area that we still have access to, but it's not going to take away from any of the rooms inside of the home. You have a picture of your wireless access point. Those devices are getting less and less ugly, I guess is the best word I can say. They kind of blend in now. And then I know Eric talked about a solution for getting something from outside of the house to our location. But in the time being, we do run what we call a bundle of wires for the service feeds, right? So at least the service provider, when they do come there, they're not worried about drilling holes inside of a brand new house. We've given them some type of conduit, some type of access to take something from the outside of the house into where our panels are, so that we can, again, make sure that we're distributing the network in a manner that suffices what the home needs.
I think this is part of the sea change, right? Which is in that mid 2000s time frame, the standard was extremely robust in terms of the hardwired component. Right now, it's about a strong wired for wireless standard, and then the add-ons tend to be the hardwired side of things, right?
100%. You're right. I mean, when I first started, we had racks and racks of equipment in homes. I mean, those racks are shrinking down, but the racks are still there for the networking side of it. The network is just like the concrete foundation of the home. Without that networking foundation, everything else you layer on top of it is going to, provide an experience that may not meet their needs. So, starting with the solid foundation, then the buyers can upgrade from there. And a lot of the upgrades that we see and recommend is hardwiring locations that are key experience areas, right? So TVs for streaming, home computers for work and for video conferencing, devices that you don't want to obviously lose connectivity over any type of Wi-Fi issues. And again, we really try to push that these are upgrades that the builders can make money on, right? This isn't something that they should see as a loss leader.
And this is not pie in the sky options and upgrades, right? This is upgrades most buyers will take if presented, right? Even in the equipment closet or in the enclosure, upgraded router, higher speed, maybe firewalls and stuff on there, larger switches to go to more locations. I think power cycling, remote power cycling to reboot modems and stuff, so people aren't crawling around or scuffling around in the basement to restart a modem and such. That once those are explained and presented, they're typically bought. Am I right?
100%. Yeah. At one point, those terms were like seeing an alien, but the education level has increased. And again, back to the consumer demand, they're seeing these things, they're hearing these terms, they're asking about these devices, and can they get them in their houses? And again, during that 2010 to 20 era, companies started providing the DIY type solutions that we started to feel more comfortable in offering to a production home buyer. And again, it's creating a great experience for them that at one point was probably not doable.
Yep. So let's just take a look at some of this stuff.
Yeah, pretty basic and standard, but 2-point connect, 2-port Cat6 terminations, your coax terminations, nice and clean. Obviously, the products are out there to deliver a very nice, clean, finished job. And it looks professional, and that's what the consumer is looking for, a nice, professional, finished job. So one of the things that we started when we were trying to figure out what would be a basic standard was, the whole wireless concept. And, you'll hear, well, the service provider router is plenty enough to take the Wi-Fi throughout my whole home. I don't know why I would be concerned about adding any other wireless, boosting or enhancing devices in my home. So we were fortunate to work with a builder here in this area, and they allowed us to kind of walk some of their models with a Wi-Fi device that basically measures bandwidth and speeds throughout the house based on the devices that we were using. So we started taking just the singular Wi-Fi router that the service provider gave, and we would map out the entire home and see the signal strength. And then we started adding in boosters at different areas just to show them what an actual full proper coverage of the home would look like. And, that visual really hit home, I think, as to, wow, okay, maybe we're not providing the best solution that we thought we were providing. So for us, this was a really telling experiment to really hammer home the point that, again, at the bare minimum, let's wire access points throughout the home so that the user experience meets what the consumer is looking for now.
So it sells the builder, sells the buyer too. The
A
buyer
hundred.
wants to know why do I need to invest in this? You can show them.
Yeah, exactly. We do this in our presentations when we're working with the home buyer. Absolutely. And this kind of piggybacks right on it. So we use these. This is a model of a home, and our sales team will sit with a potential buyer, and on top of those heat maps, kind of just walk through their home and try to figure out what their lifestyle is going to be like. How are they going to use their home from a networking standpoint, and where the gaps might be, and what they're getting from a service provider, and what the builder might be providing in their base packages, and then try to outline something that would fit their lifestyle. So that, again, I keep using the word, but we're a big experience company. We want to make sure at the end of the day they're buying a brand new house and they're going to get the experience that they're looking for. So we'll draw up a simplified map like that. We can get as detailed as something more sophisticated, CAD drawings. But again,
I'm a believer in this stuff because I think it saves rework, and I also think it sells, right? Like so much of what an integrator does is behind the walls. It's like people don't know what they're paying for. When they see a drawing, they get it. And has that been your experience?
yeah, the devil's in the details, right? Let them see what they're purchasing. Keeps everybody on the same page. And again, we just make sure that we're providing what they're looking for, and putting it on paper. Everybody's on the same page at that point.
And then you were kind enough to put together a good, better, best package.
It's a pretty basic package. What we're trying to get here is just cover the basics, right? So we're going to make sure that we got good Wi-Fi throughout the whole house. Even if they're not going to jump and add all the extra access points, at least the wiring's in place, right? And I think Eric touched on that, dead drops. At least make sure the infrastructure's there. Whether or not you want to buy the equipment this second, not a big deal, but your walls are wide open. Let's make sure we get the infrastructure in place so that down the road, if you decided, oh, they were right, or that does make sense, you're not tearing up everything. So this is pretty basic. And again, the concept is builders have an opportunity to make money here.
The better package, what's the step up here?
Yeah, so we really try to add more hardwired locations. So we've covered the scenario now. We've got our wireless taken care of. Now we really want to focus on some of the premier areas in the home, whether it be for streaming or for home office, where we're going to get some hardwired locations in there, so that we guarantee that the speeds that you're requesting and purchasing are going to be delivered to those products.
And best?
Again, just piggybacking on the other two packages, we're going to add a couple more hardwired drops throughout the house. We really are going to focus on some of the exterior as well. The exterior spaces are becoming prime areas for entertainment now. So we want to make sure that the exterior is covered in all this as well. And then the equipment's going to grow a little bit because as you add more hardwired locations, you need bigger pieces of equipment to handle all the switching and the device load itself. And I should mention, service, again, is a big part of what we do, right? So we want to make sure that we're handing off these systems. So we're meeting with all the homeowners, providing them step-by-step instructions on what they've received and how it works, as well as giving them the warranties and the guarantees that if they need anything, they can contact us and we're there for them. New home buyers want to have a little bit more hand-holding, and that's what we want to give them. We want to make them feel like they're not just being thrown out there with a bunch of products and equipment they have no idea what to do with.
And here's more of the stuff of those packages.
Yep. So you see bigger switches, network switches, right? It's not like the old phone line where you can just splice it together and put your pairs and wire nut it all together. You actually need dedicated networking devices to handle all the extra wiring in the house. And it's not that big a deal. Again, prices on all this stuff have come down and again made it more affordable and more realistic for the production homes to have some of the same devices that were put into custom homes not long ago.
Well, Gino, thank you for your contribution. I want to wrap up with some overall takeaways. Amy, it was great to hear from you on the wide area network or the WAN and really how much more robust that has become and how ubiquitous, robust wide area networks have become for builders and developers to work with. Also great to get that outline on the technology master planning for the outside plant to the inside, and all the benefits of that. Really appreciate you sharing with us. Eric did a great job of delineating a simple solution for getting fiber from the outside to the inside, and maybe some best packages down the line, Gino, that will incorporate fiber to WAPs or other nodes in the house. I really want to thank you for sharing your standard, your good, better, best, how you package that, and how you deliver value to builders and buyers with that. And then I want to end with just a note of encouragement that maybe we can take some of this discussion and form it into a recommendation and get a stronger standard commitment to good infrastructure and a better common understanding of this wired, wireless, and maybe even fiber sort of network of the future, and so that there's less back and forth, and there's a baseline of good network infrastructure that's provided in every new home, because it is really an essential utility. So I really want to thank all of the panelists for joining today and making your very strong and substantive contributions for history, for today, for the future. Really appreciate your passion, your minds, your expertise, and your sharing with builders. And I'm sure you'll be good partners with them as they go forward on their network connectivity. Thanks again.